I was never the kind of woman who drew attention. My voice was soft, my movements subtle, and my place was always on the edge of the room. Not out of shyness, but by choice. I learned early on that speaking too much opened doors to judgment, and showing too much only invited wounds. So, I stayed quiet and smiled when I needed to. I became very good at appearing fine when everything inside me was falling apart. That evening, dinner was at my sister-in-law's house. Another family gathering I silently dreaded. Not because of the noisy children or the heavy food or the recycled stories from the older uncles, but because of the glances. The ones that lingered too long. The polite smiles that vanished as soon as I turned away. That quiet but piercing sensation that I was always being measured, always found lacking. I sat between my son, Gabriel, and his grandfather. Gabriel was only 9, but he saw more than most adults ever would. He watched, silently, absorbing everything like a sponge. Right before they began serving the food, he leaned toward me under the table, held my hand tight, and whispered, "It's going to pass, Mommy." I smiled. I didn't want him to see how deeply those words shook me. Dinner went on, filled with forced laughter, clinking forks, and side conversations. I tried to stay present, but as always, I felt misplaced. My plate remained almost untouched, and I stared at it as if expecting something miraculous to happen, something to pull me from that chair, from that room, from the heaviness that had wrapped itself around my life like a fog I couldn't escape. And then I heard it. From the other side of the table, my husband's cousin, one of those women who speaks louder than her thoughts, let it slip with a sugary tone that masked the poison. "She just wants attention." It was a whisper, but it hit like a thunderclap. The sound in the room seemed to vanish for a second. Or maybe it was just in my head. The smell of food disappeared, my body froze, and something inside me folded inward, the way it used to when I was a girl and heard my mother say those same words after I cried myself to sleep over things she never bothered to understand. She just wants attention. Is that what they all believed? That my panic attacks, my quiet days, the times I couldn't get out of bed were all performances? That my silence, my struggles, my disappearing into myself were just theatrics? The thing I feared most had been spoken. Confirmation that even those closest to me believed my pain was a show. I tried to hold back the tears. My fingers gripped the fork tighter. I took a breath, deep and sharp, and then Gabriel stood up. No hesitation, no permission, just stood. Still holding my hand in his, with eyes that were far too old for his age, he looked straight at the woman who had whispered and said with a voice steadier than I'd ever heard, "She doesn't want attention. She saved me." The table froze, forks mid-air, words suspended. Even his grandfather coughed awkwardly as if something had stuck in his throat. And I couldn't breathe. Gabriel didn't look away. He continued, calm and clear. "When I got sick, she never left my side.
She slept on the hospital floor with her hand on my head. When I was scared, she sang to me, even though she doesn't know how to sing. When I cried, she cried too. And when no one knew if I'd ever come home, she believed I would. Then he turned to me, eyes soft but sure. And now that she's sick, no one sees it, but I do. And there, at that table, where I had always been the weak one, the invisible one, the woman who just wanted attention, I was seen by the only person who truly mattered.
After that moment, silence lingered like smoke after a fire, thick, uncomfortable, undeniable. No one moved. No one reached for their wine glass. Even the children somehow stayed still. All eyes were on Gabriel, and then on me. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't used to being defended, especially not like that, not in front of everyone. The woman who had whispered the cruel remark lowered her eyes, and for a split second, I thought I saw a flicker of shame cross her face, but it passed quickly, like most things in people who aren't used to looking inward. My husband's face remained unreadable. He took a slow sip from his glass and cleared his throat, pretending, perhaps, that nothing had happened, that this little boy's truth hadn't just cracked open the entire evening like lightning on a still pond. I wanted to run, or cry, or disappear. But Gabriel just sat back down, calm as ever, and reached for his juice as if what he had done was the most natural thing in the world. And in that moment, something inside me broke. But not in the way I feared. It was the breaking of a chain. Because all these years I had kept quiet for their sake, smiled for their comfort, hid my panic attacks, my depression, my exhaustion, so I wouldn't ruin the mood, disturb the dinner, make anyone uncomfortable. I had been shrinking myself so small I could barely breathe inside my own skin. But my son, my sweet, observant son, he had been watching. Not just watching, but feeling, absorbing every struggle I tried to conceal. And now he had given me something I didn't know I was allowed to have. Permission. Permission to be seen. Permission to feel. Permission to exist in my pain without apology. The rest of the dinner blurred. People talked again, slowly, nervously. The conversation shifted to safer topics, vacations, recipes, someone's promotion, but I wasn't listening anymore. My mind had gone somewhere else, somewhere deeper. I kept replaying Gabriel's words. He saved me. I knew the night he meant. It was the third night at the hospital. He had a high fever, the IV in his arm bruising his small skin, and he kept whispering he was scared. I remember holding his face between my hands and telling him, "You are safe. You are not alone. Mommy is here, always." At the time, I didn't think it was anything special. It was what mothers do, what we must do, even when we are falling apart inside. But to him, that night was more than a gesture. It was a rescue. And now, he had rescued me. That night, after we left the dinner and drove home in silence, I tucked Gabriel into bed. He looked tired but calm. I thanked him. "For what?" he asked, yawning. "For seeing me," I said. He smiled, already drifting off. "I always see you," he mumbled, "even when you don't." And there it was,
All those years I thought I was invisible. I was being watched by the most important eyes in the world, and in his gaze, I was not broken. I was brave. I was whole. That night, for the first time in a long time, I slept. Not the kind of sleep where your mind races behind closed eyes, but real sleep, the kind that heals. And when I woke up the next morning, something had shifted. I was no longer apologizing for existing. I was no longer shrinking.
The days after the dinner felt different. Not lighter. No, the weight of years doesn't lift overnight. But different. Like walking with a wound that finally stopped bleeding. I began noticing things I hadn't before. The way my body reacted when someone said my name with just the slightest tone of disdain. The way I used to lower my voice around certain people. The way I shrank in rooms, not because I had nothing to say, but because I had learned that speaking could be dangerous. For years, I had masked my exhaustion as politeness, my fear as forgetfulness, my sadness as being tired. And yet, Gabriel had seen through it all. There was a morning, about a week after that dinner, when he walked into the kitchen and found me staring into my coffee. No phone, no distraction, just stillness. He climbed onto the chair across from me and said, "Are you going to talk to someone?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "Talk to who, sweetheart?" I asked. He shrugged. "A person who listens, like the one I had when I got better." I remembered the therapist we had found for him during his recovery, a gentle woman who asked questions without judgment and made his son feel like his thoughts mattered. I had watched their sessions from afar and thought, he's lucky to have that, but I never thought of it for myself. "Do you think I need to talk to someone?" I asked. Gabriel looked at me with that same calm certainty. "I think you deserve to." That word, deserve. Not need, not should. Deserve. I didn't respond right away, but that night after he went to bed, I sat alone and opened my laptop. I searched for therapists. I bookmarked 3 names. I didn't call that night, but I bookmarked them. And that was something. The next Sunday, I returned to another family gathering, this time for a birthday. Same house, same faces, but something inside me had shifted. They smiled, I smiled back, but this time I didn't try to disappear. When one of the cousins made a subtle jab, something about how hard it must be to have so much free time to rest, I didn't laugh it off. I looked her in the eye and said, gently but firmly, "I used to think resting made me weak. Now I know it kept me alive." She blinked, surprised. There was no confrontation in my tone, no bitterness, just truth. And something rare happened. She didn't respond with sarcasm. She didn't walk away. She nodded, just once. I don't know if she understood, but I know she heard me. And slowly something began to unravel in me, not in a chaotic way, in a healing way, like loosening a tight knot that had lived in my chest for years. The following week, I made the call, booked the appointment. I sat in a softly lit room across from a woman who said, "Tell me your story." And for the first time in my life, I did. Not just the polished version, not the fragments I had told friends over coffee or whispered to myself during sleepless nights. I told her the whole thing. The panic, the numbness, the guilt, the shame. She didn't interrupt. She didn't flinch. She just listened. And by the end of that hour, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Weightless, not empty, but free. On the way home, I picked Gabriel up from school. He jumped into the car, backpack bouncing. "You look different," he said. "Oh yeah?" I smiled. "How?" He paused, thinking hard. "You look like you stopped holding your breath." I laughed softly, tears welling in my eyes. He was right. For the first time in a long time, I was breathing again.
Healing doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with fanfare or bright lights. It shows up quietly, in moments that feel small but shift something enormous inside you. Like the morning I woke up and didn't dread opening my eyes. Or the afternoon I passed a mirror and didn't flinch. Or the day I caught myself humming while folding laundry, something I hadn't done in years without forcing it. It's strange how the body remembers joy, even after long winters of silence. The therapy sessions became part of my routine. Some days I cried the whole hour. Other days I sat in silence, unsure of what to say. But every session, something left me. A weight, a fear, a lie I'd carried for far too long. And in the spaces those things vacated, something else began to grow. Voice. Not the loud kind that demands attention, but the steady kind. The kind that speaks even when it trembles. The kind that says, "This is who I am, and I am enough." It started showing up in unexpected places. When the school called to ask if Gabriel could stay late for a project, I didn't hesitate. I said yes, and I meant it. I didn't panic about schedules or expectations. I trusted him and myself. When a neighbor asked if I was free to volunteer at the shelter, I said no, because I was tired, and I didn't explain or apologize. And when my husband, who had grown used to my silence, asked me one evening if everything was okay now, I didn't brush it off. Instead, I looked at him and said, "I'm learning how to be okay, but I'm not pretending anymore." He didn't have a quick reply, but he sat down beside me. And for the first time in a long time, we sat in silence that wasn't heavy, just honest. Gabriel, as always, was watching. One night while we were walking home from the park, he asked, "Are you still sick, Mommy?" The question startled me. I thought carefully. I think I was never broken, just tired and sad and quiet, but not sick, not the way people think. He looked up at me, nodding slowly. "I like your quiet, but I like when you laugh too." And just like that, I laughed. It wasn't a perfect life. I still had hard days, still had moments when my hands shook or my mind played tricks on me. But I wasn't alone in it anymore. Because once you've been truly seen by someone who loves you in your rawest form, it becomes impossible to go back to hiding. And perhaps that was the greatest gift Gabriel ever gave me. Not just standing up for me at a dinner table full of people who misunderstood me, but reminding me that I mattered long before anyone else believed it. I had spent so many years waiting to be rescued, thinking someone stronger, louder, more capable would come and pull me from the fog. And yet it was a child,
a boy with kind eyes and a soft voice, who shattered the darkness, not with force, but with truth. "He saved me," he had said. But the truth is, he saved me first. I often think back to that dinner, not with bitterness, not even with pain, but with a quiet kind of reverence. It was the night I stopped being invisible, not because people suddenly understood me, but because I finally stopped needing them to. There is a particular strength that grows from being misunderstood, a kind of inner resolve that blooms when the world refuses to see you, and you decide to see yourself anyway. I spent so long trying to be small, trying not to inconvenience, trying not to be too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too dramatic, too needy. But what if attention wasn't something shameful to desire? What if being seen, truly seen, was not a weakness, but a need as essential as air? And what if by allowing ourselves to be seen, we give others permission to do the same? Gabriel taught me that. He didn't need to understand the mechanics of depression or anxiety. He didn't read the clinical definitions or memorize the symptoms. He simply felt. And in that feeling, he acted with truth, with love, with courage. She doesn't want attention. She saved me. I hear those words in my mind sometimes when I'm about to shrink again. At the grocery store, when someone scoffs because I'm taking too long. At work, when my voice shakes during a presentation. At night, when the old voices creep in and whisper that I'm not enough. Those words anchor me. Because I know now, I was never a burden. I was a lifeline. And even as I struggled, I was still giving, still loving, still showing up in all the ways that mattered. And maybe, just maybe, that's what real strength looks like. Not perfection, not performance, but presence. Today, I keep a journal, not the polished kind, just scribbles and moments and fragments of thought. On the first page, I wrote a quote from Gabriel, one I never want to forget. "He always sees you, even when you don't." And when the days are hard, because yes, they still come, I open to that page. I read it slowly, out loud sometimes, and I remind myself I have already survived the worst, and in the midst of it, I saved someone, and he saved me. So if you're watching this, and you've ever been told you're too emotional, too much, that you just want attention, I hope you know this: you're not too much. You're just enough. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there sees you, even when you don't.